Greetings, warm welcome. It's an honor to have you here at the Saphira Center of Shamanism, where we break down the ancient esoteric practices of shamanism and the occult, bringing them into balance with the deep psyche. My name is Luke, experienced practitioner and mentor of the shamanic and occult sciences. It's an honor to have you here. Thank you for joining me. If you have interest in working with me, then definitely check out the first and second links within the description of this video. If you have interest in joining my premium membership service, a way to gain more direct access to me and have me as a mentor / guide throughout your initiatory process and exploration of the occult and shamanic sciences, then definitely check that out within the first link. The second link in the description is the Patreon, which is a more passive platform which will give you access to lots of different initiatory systems and practices. I'm very active on Patreon, uploading multiple times each week. Definitely check those out. I look forward to seeing you over there. So today we're going to be discussing an often overlooked area of occult initiation, but also one of the most powerful areas as well. We're going to be discussing the concept of transcending the zodiac. The zodiac is a highly misunderstood concept, with the majority of the New Age spiritual community projecting all of their stuff onto the zodiac and basically acting as slaves to the zodiacal constellations. When in reality, from an initiatory standpoint, the whole purpose of the zodiac is to master the shadow aspects of them. Okay, a lot of astrology readings are very love and light and project a lot of stuff onto the zodiacal constellations instead of actually approaching them as active initiatory forces. With the zodiac, it's very easy to attach to the given qualities of that given zodiac and therefore basically use that to hold on to a particular identity structure. I'm the way I am because, oh, this planet was in that zodiac at this time. I'm the way I am because I'm a Libra. I'm the way I am because I'm a Leo. Okay, if you're doing that, you are a slave to the zodiacal constellations and you are not tapping into their full power, but are very much actually falling into the trap of the zodiac. Okay, the real potential of the zodiac is actually learning how to transcend them and integrate the shadow aspects of them. And this is what the advanced occult sciences can allow you to do if you tap into the right intelligences. From a Qliphothic standpoint, there are hordes of beings that dwell within the shadow aspects of each zodiacal constellation. And these are referred to as the 12 Qliphothic Armies. Okay, they are not one spirit, but they are basically a collective of various different entities that dwell within a specific Qliphothic zodiac. And the Qliphothic zodiac works in a similar way to the actual planetary Qliphothic spheres. Okay, whereas the Qliphothic spheres within, say, the Qliphothic tree are basically a process of opening up these different planetary energies and going through a transmutation process and then mastering the energy of that given planet. It works exactly the same with the Qliphothic zodiac. When you're exploring the 12 Qliphothic armies and are basically initiating into them, you are basically being exposed to the inversion of all of those zodiac signs so that you can face it and integrate it. And what that does is basically trigger a huge transmutation process that actually liberates you from the influence of that zodiac sign. It's a really juicy area of occult initiation that very few people are even aware of. So when we approach occult initiation, we tend to approach it normally through planetary gateways. Say the Sephiroth or the Qliphoth is basically accessing different planetary spheres that hold resonance with different portions of the human body. So from a Qliphothic perspective, we're initiating into a sphere, and then we're gaining access to the repressed energy and the shadow aspects of ourselves that are stored within that given part of the body in which that particular planetary energy is resonant with. That is how most occult initiatory systems work, through the planetary gateways. But in order to really get the most out of occult initiation, we also need to approach the other area of cosmic oppression, which is the zodiac. And the zodiac, in many ways, does actually hold more oppression than the planets themselves. Okay, instead of being a slave to the planets and a slave to the zodiac, the whole purpose of moving through the Qliphothic work is actually to learn to master them, remove the karma that dwells within each individual one, and then actually gain power over that particular zodiac / planetary gateway. Okay, you can also access the zodiac through the Necronomicon gnosis by basically working with the Great Old Ones or the Outer Gods in order to basically tap into various alien intelligences, ancient extraterrestrial intelligences that actually dwell outside of the zodiac itself, but in which you access through a particular zodiac gateway. And I'm sure there are many different ways that you can access the or transcend the zodiac as well, but these are the primary two methods that I'm going to be discussing today. So in this video, we are going to be breaking down each of the 12 Qliphothic armies, exploring its full initiatory power, each of their individual initiatory powers and potentials, as well as touching on the Necronomicon version as well. Very juicy subject, so definitely stay tuned. So when it comes to the actual zodiacal constellations, we need to understand that this is an evolutionary technology that is here to help us to master the given traits that dwell within each individual zodiac. But the issue is that we can very easily fall a victim and fall slave to these specific zodiacal constellations and basically just be a victim to what they are weaving into the collective consciousness according to the given karmic imprints that we are emanating. So when it comes to the influence of astrology as a whole, it's all going to depend on your karmic imprints. It's all going to depend on your soul's blueprint, which basically outlines what you have come here to master, the karma that you have come here to purify, as well as the individual qualities that you emanate. And these are the things that astrology readings, particularly one that is not dualistic and love and light, this is what an astrology reading can be very good at helping you to uncover about yourself, okay? What you've come here to master, different predefined challenges, but it's important to understand that these are not external concepts, okay? These are literal alignments that act as direct logical gateways through the rational mind that allow you to comprehend the different karmic imprints that you are holding on the level of the soul, and therefore will show often very clearly what you have actually come here to master. So many people approach the planets and approach the zodiac as external things that are basically weaving different controlling mechanisms into the collective consciousness and influencing both the macrocosm and the microcosm as a whole. But it's important to understand that how each planet and zodiacal constellation actually affects you is going to really depend on your karmic imprints. Okay, and facing one of these energies from a conscious occult initiatory standpoint basically allows you to tap into that current and build a relationship with that aspect of you. I'll give you an example. If, say, we have Saturn, which is a core initiatory planet that rules over restriction, karmic rebalancing, and concealment, ultimately, if we initiate through a planetary gateway, so in the Sephiroth, for example, that would be Binah, and in the Qliphoth, that would be Satariel, we are basically building an active relationship with that planetary gateway and are basically opening ourselves up to more of its initiatory powers. So we're not actually sort of removing the influence of the planets in any way whatsoever, but we're actually learning how to flow with the planets and actually master their shadow aspects. And this is exactly the same with the zodiacal constellations, okay? This is particularly important when you are approaching initiation from a darker perspective, a shadow perspective through the Qliphothic realms, the Qliphothic planetary spheres, or the Qliphothic Zodiac. Okay, you are basically tapping into the primordial portions of the Zodiac and are basically learning how to gain access to them so that you can willingly flow with their currents. Okay, and when you are purifying the karma that is held within each gateway of the zodiac, you are then basically not going to be controlled by its external flow of energy. Okay, which means that it does mark an important aspect of one's ascent and an important aspect of one's process of self-deification and liberation, because ultimately the whole purpose of self-deification related practices and initiatory systems is basically to gain genuine spiritual autonomy. Genuine autonomy which has basically been limited by the different karmic imprints that you are holding that are then resonant with the different planetary gateways and the different zodiacal gateways as well. So when you initiate into the Qliphothic spheres, you are going through the planetary gateways, the Qliphothic aspects of those given planetary energies, and you're basically purifying the karma that dwells within each of those planetary gateways, which is then going to improve your relationship with that planetary energy as a whole. You're going to be in touch with the actual architecture that holds that given planetary gateway in place, and therefore you're no longer going to be a victim to what the planets are doing outside of you. And it's exactly the same with the zodiac. Okay, when you're approaching the Qliphothic zodiac, you are basically going to the archetypal forces, which are the Qliphothic armies. They are the archetypal forces of the inverted zodiac. Okay, so basically the shadow aspects of the zodiac that are basically shelled within the different zodiacal constellations that basically cause you to then continue to fall victim to the actions of that zodiac. Okay, and when you look at the zodiac, it's built off of the concept of destiny, it's built off of the concept of cosmic order and cosmic law, when in reality the whole purpose of that is to break out of the cosmic law in general, break out of that cosmic order that is woven into your reality by the different zodiac signs, so that you can ultimately learn how to weave those different aspects of you into your reality in a way that's actually sustainable and ultimately autonomous. So it's important to realize, however, that when you're dealing with the Qliphothic zodiac, in my view, you're dealing with forces that do hold quite a lot of intensity. And in my view, it is important to go through the planetary gateways first, okay? Go through the planetary gateways first, because you're then sort of taking yourself on that process of unlocking these different gateways and therefore purifying the karma that is within those different gateways. And you're also greatly transfiguring your energy system as well, and it will be processing and alchemizing energy in a completely different way. Whereas if you went straight into the Qliphothic zodiac, you wouldn't have established that necessary groundwork, and instead you're basically tapping into extremely chaotic forces that, let's face it, hold a huge amount of your karma. So going through the Qliphothic spheres first is definitely worth doing if you are wanting to face the 12 Qliphothic armies. So basically you can see each Qliphothic army as being a shadow aspect of that given zodiac. Okay, forces that are responsible for basically holding the oppression that that given zodiac sign weaves within reality. Okay, so I'm going to break down each individual one, giving an in-depth description of each one according to the post that I've recently put on Patreon. On my Patreon, I'm also putting on initiatory systems that you can use to actually transcend the individual zodiac using the 12 Qliphothic armies, but I'm going to break them down here. So we always start with Aries. Okay, starting at Aries, we are facing the Qliphothic army that goes by the name of Byriron. Okay, Byriron. Okay, the shadow aspect of Aries. So Aries functions in the zodiac as the primal spark of identity and will, the initiator who rushes forward first. It gives birth to individuality, courage, and the fire to begin. However, the Byron ignite this spark into an infernal rage and conquest, tearing down every mask until identity is devoured by wrath. Okay, so whilst you could say Aries is going to emanate the given masks that are associated with identity, will, and basically forging the path first, that basically means that Byron, the Qliphothic army that rules over the shadow aspect of Aries, is going to basically tear all of that away and get you to embrace the polar opposite to that, to then help you to gain a paradoxical control over basically what happens if you lose control over those traits. Okay, it's absolutely fascinating. So let me say that again. The Byron ignite this spark into an infernal rage and conquest, tearing down every mask until identity is devoured by wrath. Okay, the ordeal is to be consumed by flame until hesitation, doubt, and falsehood are reduced to ash. Liberation comes through this Qliphothic army when the initiate stands within a state of crowned fire. A state of identity that basically represents the raw sovereignty blazing from within. Okay, so if you look at Aries as being the sign that rules over all things relating to rushing forward first, individuality, courage, you basically have to experience the rupture of those external concepts. You have to experience the internal rupture of those things to then gain control over them. Okay, so it is a path that is induced by, primordial chaos, bringing chaos to the false aspects of that given sign so that you can gain access to the true power that is within the shell of Aries. Okay, so a lot around rage, a lot around fire, and learning how to master those different qualities. We then have Taurus, okay, and this is Ademiron. Taurus anchors the zodiac in stability, sensuality, and the desire to hold, build, and protect. So very earthly is what we're referring to here, okay? Which basically means that the Qliphothic zodiac is going to do the opposite. It's going to uproot all things relating to your earthly reality, okay? That to what the New Age would say for a typical Taurus would be extremely uncomfortable, basically teaching you how to master the paradox of it, okay? The Ademiron corrupt this grounding into insatiable hunger, suffocating comfort, and obsession with possession. The ordeal is to be swallowed whole by desire until nothing remains but the suffocation of craving. Liberation comes when the initiate emerges, no longer bound by attachment, able to savor matter and pleasure as tools of will rather than chains. Whereas you could say the shadow aspect of Taurus is basically going to represent chains that bind you to possession, that bind you to earthly material related things. Okay. Gemini. Okay, I always have trouble pronouncing this one, but that is Zeladimiron. Okay, Zeladimiron with a T, like Zafkiel or Zadkiel, it's Zeladimiron. Okay, Gemini governs connection, intellect, communication, and duality in the zodiac. It is the quicksilver bridge of ideas and dialogue. The Zeladimiron, always struggle to say that, unravel this function into labyrinths of deceit, contradiction, and paradox that shatter the concept of thought and identity itself. Okay, so the complete opposite of that, of the control over ideas and dialogue. The ordeal is endless self-contradiction and deception until the mind collapses under its own doublethink. Liberation comes when the initiate ceases to seek truth as a fixed concept and instead wields duality consciously. Thought and speech becoming deliberate sorcery, action, and infernal logos. Okay, so what we're really referring to here is Gemini being basically trapping you within a place of endless thought, logic, and intellect. You could say that this holds resonance with the planet Mercury from an initiatory standpoint through the Qliphoth or the Sephiroth. Okay, so it's this particular Qliphothic army is all about dissolving the concept of thought as a whole. So very, very similar in my view to the Qliphothic sphere of Samael, okay, which is basically the demiurge, which is dissolving falsehood, trials of insanity. This is not too dissimilar to that. Okay, so I just want to repeat this part. The ordeal is endless self-contradiction and deception until the mind collapses under its own doublethink. Liberation comes when the initiate ceases to seek truth. Okay, so again, it's all about the pursuit of false clarity and learning how to actually see past the concept of clarity so that you can ultimately cultivate it yourself through the heart, learning how to see in the dark. Okay, so very much the kind of left pillar of the Qliphothic tree, also deeply related to Satariel when it comes to the shattering of false clarity and order. Very, very powerful one, that one. Cancer. Sheshiruron. Cancer's role in the zodiac is emotional bonding, home, ancestry, and the archetype of the mother, rather. It roots us in family, nurture, and memory. The Sheshiruron invert this into suffocating waters of rot and ancestral poison. So working a lot on the ancestral level of trauma here, burning away different coping mechanisms, burning away different traits that have been inherited from the generational line, but also hold resonance with different past lives as well. Okay. So let me read that bit again. The Sheshiruron invert this into suffocating waters of rot and ancestral poison, the devouring womb that consumes rather than nourishes. The ordeal is drowning in bloodline trauma and maternal consumption until all refuge collapses. Okay, so very kind of motherly energy this, okay? Really deep healing and transmutation happens on the maternal level of consciousness. Liberation comes when death and womb merge, and the initiate births themselves anew from the grave, unbound by heritage, reborn from decay. Okay, so this holds similarity. Again, I'm going to mention the Qliphothic sphere of Satariel because, in fact, I would say a lot of these hold resonance with Satariel, but this one particularly when it comes to mentioning of the mother and ancestral trauma in that way, because ultimately Satariel is the Saturnian sphere within the Qliphothic tree, and the Saturnian sphere is all about karma and all about karmic rebalancing. And what you're doing here through transcending the zodiac and working with these different armies is basically processing different layers of extremely deeply rooted karmic imprints that are keeping you tied to the controlling aspects of the zodiac itself. Okay, so particularly the aspect when it comes to liberation comes when death and womb merge. So that is Satariel down, literally down to a T. Okay, Satariel is all about holding yourself in that womb, letting solid reality be concealed whilst you build discipline, trust, and sovereignty. This is not much different. Okay, learning how to embrace decay, and again around the pursuit of false clarity, but a lot around actually learning how to master decay as a current and embrace it as a karma purification tool. Very, very important. Whereas, you know, Cancer is all about home, ancestry is all about nurturing. You're basically dealing with Cancer's shadow aspect, which is basically where that gets twisted into stagnancy, neglect, and all of those different things. So a lot of healing happens on the ancestral line, particularly on the feminine side of the lineage, the maternal side of the lineage, as you're processing all things that are relating to the divine mother. Okay. Leo. Okay, the whole charisma, like outward energy. Okay, we've got to let all of that go here when we face the Shell Habirodon. Okay, the Shell Habirodon. Leo radiates charisma, rulership, pride, and solar force. It governs the zodiac's power of self-expression and command. Okay, so it's a very righteous energy. Okay, Leo energy is a very righteous energy. A lot of the people who I know who have a lot of Leo energy are extremely righteous in nature and ultimately have to find their own way. Okay. On the other hand, the Shelhabiron inflate this radiance until it bursts, crucifying the false self of all false pride and hollow crowns. Okay, so dealing with a lot of illusions of grandeur here. This again is mentioned around like liberation through the black sun. This is directly tied to the energy of Thagirion. If you are familiar with the Qliphothic work and the Qliphothic sphere of Thagirion, which I will make a video about, sort of specifying the black sun exactly as a standalone concept, but this is very resonant with that. Okay, the shadow aspect of the Leo energy causes a lot of illusions of grandeur, the belief that someone's come further than they have, and ultimately somebody hiding behind their own achievements. This basically shatters all of that. Okay, you got to face the illusions of grandeur, face your pretense, and ultimately, I love this part, shatter the hollow crown. Okay, shatter the hollow crown. The ordeal is the collapse of kingship, the shattering of the ego's illusion, and liberation comes when the initiate rises as the black sun, shining not for others, but as essence itself, radiant without throne or audience. So because you can see how these are very linked to the Qliphothic spheres as well, this is why it's very important to go through the Qliphothic initiation first before you're facing these different Qliphothic zodiac, because you're basically dealing with extensions of these spheres that hold much more chaos and basically deeper layers of processing compared to the spheres themselves. But when you combine them and you go through both of them, you can only imagine the level of karma that you're going to be purifying. Okay. So I want to mention this part again. Liberation comes when the initiate rises as the black sun. Okay, the black sun is basically the sun that shines only for itself. Okay, that vampirizes falsehood. Okay, that is essentially a core aspect of demonic metamorphosis, where you learn to be the devourer of falsehood. You learn to be the receiver instead of emanating false illumination, false light, and false clarity that is brought by the unchecked Leo energy. Absolutely essential. Okay. Virgo. Okay. Sephariron. Sephariron. Virgo functions as the zodiac's analyst, healer, and refiner, dissecting and purifying through discernment. It gives clarity, order, and the ability to serve through detail. Basically like the opposite to all aspects of the Qliphoth, yeah? So you can really see how important the Qliphothic work is, and you can really see how, like, when people are, identifying with these individual signs, then you can really see how it basically just completely caps their evolution. And, basically they're then identifying with something that isn't even them in the first place. It's something that they've been born into. Okay, so you can see that the whole Virgo thing around dissecting and purifying through discernment, it gives clarity, order, and the ability to serve through detail. It's like the Qliphothic work just shatters all detail whatsoever, and you have to embrace the unknown. So exactly that, okay? The Zephariron sharpen this into sterile cruelty and endless dissection, cutting the self apart until only fragments remain. The ordeal is annihilation beneath the scalpel of corrupted purity. Okay, so again, a lot around. I feel this one is quite resonant with Gugshiblar, okay? False abundance, false desire, okay? But Gugshiblar, the Jupiterian sphere, we're working, I feel, with an energy that is directly related to the shadow aspect of Jupiter when we are working with this particular Qliphothic army, okay? And the Qliphothic sphere of Gugshiblar is all about false desire and false abundance and illusionary desires, allowing yourself to be devoured by the fiery pit of desire itself. Okay, and this is literally the pillars that are holding up the unchecked Virgo energy. Okay, the ordeal is annihilation beneath the scalpel of corrupted purity. Liberation comes when the indestructible core is revealed, clarity that survives all cuts, ruthless discernment, that seeks essence directly. Okay, so seeks true light, basically. Shattering false light, seeking the truth. Okay, essential. Libra, okay, a lot around like a lot around people pleasing, a lot around like emanating a particular sort of quality that sort of makes you sort of appear as the righteous one is what this energy is all about. And Oberon completely shatters that. Okay, so Libra has the function of balance. So this means that people often who emanate a lot of Libra energy sort of are, there are a lot around kind of maintaining peace. So Libras are often emanating qualities that are more people pleasing in nature, but people pleasing that has a more narcissistic charge behind it. Okay, and this is exactly what this Qliphothic army dissolves. Okay, so Libra's function is balance, beauty, and the weaving of harmony in the zodiac. It seeks to weigh and reconcile opposites to bring symmetry into relationships. Okay. It's just funny reading these because the whole spiritual community is all about these individual qualities without even facing the Qliphothic aspects of them. It's like, God, imagine if they just were to throw themselves into this energy, what would end up happening? So the Oberon are an army that are merciless when it comes to the mirror of beauty. In fact, they smash the mirror of beauty and expose harmony as manipulation and balance as a power game. This is the thing, the whole people pleaser energy is a power game. Okay, I'm just trying to maintain the peace. Oh, I'm just trying to help everybody because I have no self-esteem without doing it. Okay, it's a selfish need, and this is what you have to sort of master with this particular energy. Okay, so that part I want to really reiterate. This particular Qliphothic army smashes the mirror of beauty and exposes harmony as manipulation and balance as a power game. Okay, the shadow aspect of the Libra is controlling through paradox, doing all of the right things in order to receive what I need in order to sustain my falsehood. Okay, massive, massive one. The ordeal is seeing every relationship as weight and every bond as trial. Liberation comes when the initiate no longer bends to borrowed scales, but becomes the scale itself. Okay, which basically means that you're no longer kind of trying to maintain this illusion of peace and balance on the outside in order to make yourself feel enough. Now, bear in mind, like the Qliphothic spheres and like other types of initiatory systems as well, there are going to be certain aspects of this that you find easier to emanate than others. And obviously, it's really going to depend on the individual. For example, there are some Qliphothic spheres that I found really easy that other people found really hard, and there are some Qliphothic spheres that I found really, really hard and others found really easy. So it really depends on what qualities you're able to emanate. But if you're somebody who has a lot of Libra energy, this is obviously going to be you've obviously come here to master these given qualities, which basically means that it could be the more challenging Qliphothic army to actually merge with and a more challenging sign to transcend. Okay. Scorpio, rebirth, sexuality, underworld energy. Scorpio governs intensity, passion, sexuality, death, and rebirth within the zodiac. It draws the soul into transformation through descent. Okay, beautiful. The Neshesherion, let me say that again. The Nesheshetheron, that's how to say it. The Nesheshetheron, that's how you say it. Pour venom through this current, flooding the initiate with psychic poison, destructive sorcery, and the ordeal of death-fueled desire. Basically, you're encountering how you're cursing yourself inside, basically, okay? Because this constellation, this sign deals with a lot of different underworld aspects and deep psyche related stuff, you're really going into the hidden thought forms within yourself here. You're really exploring the different aspects of yourself that remain hidden on the level of self-attack. Okay, and that's what is meant by psychic poison, destructive sorcery. It's all internal concepts. Okay. The initiate is undone through exposure and corruption. Liberation comes when the venom is digested and mastered. The serpent-born self, immune to poison, wielding death and desire as power. So again, a lot of Lilithian energy here. When we say serpent born, it's directly tied to the Lilithian energy, okay? Dealing with some of the deeper and more destructive aspects of your feminine energy that are actually blocking true openness and receptivity. Massive. Sagittarius, okay, Nashashiron. Sagittarius expands the zodiac through exploration, philosophy, vision, and prophecy, okay, which basically means that you're dealing with the when you're looking at the shadow aspect, you're dealing with the pursuit of knowledge in a way that is unbalanced. Okay, so Sagittarius drives the quest for meaning and the journey into the unknown. The Neshashiron twists this fantasy into blind faith and prophecy that betrays. The ordeal is collapse of vision and the ruin of every philosophy. In other words, you lose any tangible path, any predefined path, okay? The Sagittarius energy is reliant on philosophy, vision, and all things relating to that. So it's like looking for things outside that are going to basically justify one's own sense of self-worth, okay? And this is what this army shattered into a million pieces. Okay, the ordeal is collapse of vision and the ruin of every philosophy. Okay, in other words, any predefined philosophy, any predefined path or predefined way of being is not going to serve you anymore. It's not going to sustain you. And the biggest thing here is that it never sustained you in the first place. It was an illusion. Okay, so this causes people to embody a lot of hungry ghost energy, moving to one thing from one thing to the other. And this is like the classic energy that masks the pursuit of knowledge and insight as evolution, when in reality evolution is dealing with the whole desire of needing to attain those things in the first place, understanding what's really behind it. Liberation through this zodiac comes when the initiate embraces infinite gnosis and infinite gnosis without dogma, wandering freely as the black philosopher bound to no doctrine. Okay, the black philosopher is the dark scholar. Okay, the dark scholar that is ultimately forging his own path or her own path, free from any predefined paradigm. Okay, so this is where, if I was to tie this to a Qliphothic sphere, it would be directly related to Gagiel. Okay, ruled by Beelzebub, all about false constructs, all about control over the masses. You are dealing with these deeper aspects within yourself that want to follow a predefined method and don't want to actually create your own method. Massive one, massive. Okay. Okay, Capricorn, Dagdagiron. Capricorn sets the zodiac in law, endurance, structure, and the weight of time, very Saturnian in nature. It governs responsibility, ambition, and the acceptance of mortality. The Dagdagiron crush the initiate beneath patriarchal law and inevitability, grinding body and soul beneath the wheel of death. The ordeal is despair beneath the weight of inevitability. Okay, so again, very Saturnian, very much linked to Satariel, a lot around sort of, being held and concealed and not actually having much conscious control over where you go next. Okay, so you're basically shedding those deeper aspects within the self. The ordeal is despair beneath the weight of inevitability, and liberation comes when the initiate devours time itself, becoming sovereign of mortality, crowned by death as weapon, not as master of it. Okay, so what we really want to hone in on there is ultimately the devouring of time itself. So there's a lot of if you have worked with Binar or some other Saturnian energy, there is a lot of time distortion. Okay, you're really sort of shown there that time is not a linear concept and that a lot of it is perceptual. Okay, so when you're facing this particular initiatory energy through Dagdagiron, you are facing everything when it comes to restriction, karmic rebalancing, and things being concealed from you. Okay, very much linked to that sort of Capricorn energy when it comes to being that zodiac of law, structure, and the weight of time, You've got to face the dissolution of time itself. You've got to face the dissolution of structure and not knowing where to go next. Okay, with the Saturnian energy, with Binar, Satariel, you need to embrace the gestation phase, the incubation phase. Okay, whereby you cannot put a time on your next output. Okay, and that's a huge phase of initiation that basically ensures that you are not forcing your inner child or your soul to do something out of obligation. Okay, it's a massive one. Okay, and this kind of energy really shows you that on a very deep level, how you are binding yourself to predefined time, structure, and law, and how you are working according to the expectations of predefined time and predefined law, instead of actually letting things gestate and actually form within the womb space before they are ready to be cultivated by the true will. Okay, it's huge. It's really embracing of the fertile soil here, where all time and structure completely shatters with Dagdagaron. Okay. Aquarius, Behemeron. Aquarius functions as the zodiac's visionary, bringing innovation, revolution, and collective ideals. It unites the individual with the community of the future. The Behemeron dissolve the self into the faceless hive, suffocating identity in the collective swarm. The ordeal is loss of individuality in conformity, annihilation in mass mind. So again, quite Gagiel in nature, very similar to Gagiel in nature. Also has links, I feel, to Arab-Zarak as well, because in Arab-Zarak, which is ruled by Baal, who is, all about being a leader and forging the path, you almost have to embrace the paradox of, how you've been a slave to different coping mechanisms and different aspects of you. So this is exactly the same when you're facing this energy. You have to, in order to really be a leader, you have to cease the control of wanting to be one in the first place, at which point you are receiving trials whereby you may be stuck, or your autonomy may feel like it's being taken away, at which point you need to sit with that energy and allow that to process in its own way. Very similar to Arab-Zarak, which exposes a lot of imprisoning coping mechanisms. This, on the other hand, exposes those coping mechanisms in a very similar way, but comes through a paradox. Okay, the initiation comes and the transformation comes through the paradox of actually gaining more leadership and more autonomy by actually having the experience of losing it. Okay, very similar to how a lot of, say, wealth daemons work and things like that, in terms of having like the falsehood taken away, having money taken away, in order to then actually develop greater discipline and autonomy, so that it then attracts more to you in the long run. Massive. Okay. Finally, Pisces. Okay, Pisces, Neshimiron. Pisces completes the zodiac as mysticism, compassion, imagination, and the dissolution of boundaries. So this can be seen as the equivalent of the abyssal plane from a Qliphothic standpoint. Okay, it dissolves the cycle back into the collective ocean. The Neshimiron drown this into illusions, martyrdom, and endless fantasies. Okay, the ordeal is annihilation through archetypes of sacrifice and delusion, drowning in dreams. So the ultimate death of the martyr archetype. Okay, and that is a huge one when it comes to self-deification and when it comes to learning how to be the black sun, learning how to serve yourself ultimately. Okay, the ordeal is annihilation through archetypes of sacrifice and delusion, drowning in dream. Okay, sacrifice and delusion. So it's again the delusion of sacrifice, the illusion of having to sacrifice your essence in order to fit the needs of somebody else. Okay, so this often would manifest trials whereby you have to put boundaries in and you have to serve yourself. Again, very resonant with the people pleaser energy as a whole. Okay. Liberation comes when the initiate learns to dissolve without erasure or full erasure, to wield illusion as current, and to walk, dream as serpent priest, entering and leaving at will. Okay, so this is where you kind of gain mastery over the zodiac as a whole. Okay, learning how to shift between the worlds by dissolving the responsibility and the constraints that you have to the world as a whole. Okay, whereas when you're sort of a slave to the zodiac, you're operating only within the predefined order, which basically means that you're then going to be falling constantly victim to what the zodiac are weaving into your evolutionary path. Whereas when you're actually making the decision to purify the karma which is behind each one, the whole purpose of it is ultimately learning how to shift your consciousness between. When we're going through deification and dark matter based alchemy, we are not completely rejecting light, and we're not rejecting the zodiac. We are actually honoring the zodiac as an evolutionary technology instead of a discrete prison for the soul in that respect. So when you're facing the zodiac in this way, the zodiac is no longer a prison, but actually starts to work in your favor and actually starts to work with you. And that final initiation through Pisces is ultimately learning how to dissolve the ties that are keeping you bound to cosmic order in general, and ultimately showing you how to shift your consciousness between them. At the end of the day, we are in a physical body within a light matter multiverse, so we also have to basically free ourselves from the multiverse that we are born into, but also not escape the multiverse altogether as well. Okay, we need to learn how to master both energies, and this is why, the Sephirothic aspects of the Sephirothic tree as well as the Qliphothic tree, that's why it's important for both. Okay, and it works exactly the same with the zodiac. If I focus only on the light aspects of the zodiac, and identifying only what is seen about the zodiac, then I'm going to always be a victim to the shadow aspect of that zodiac. I'm never going to change. I'm never going to transcend it at all. Just the same as if I do the Sephiroth without the Qliphoth, then I'm initiating myself into a higher state of righteousness without actually doing the groundwork to actually gain my autonomy and actually gain power over the shadow aspects of those given spheres. So it really is that consistent flow of yin and yang here. Okay, so how do you transcend the zodiac? You approach the Qliphothic armies. That's the best way to do it, and it's the most straightforward way to do it, and the most, in my view, the least disorientating compared to some of the other methods. So you transcend the zodiac by first prioritizing initiating through the Qliphothic spheres, and then you can either continue with the later stages of the Qliphoth, or you can go into the Qliphothic zodiac and work through them one by one, starting at Aries and then finishing at Pisces. And each one is going to manifest a series of initiatory trials that is there specifically to flesh out the individual things that I just spoke about. That piece of text, if you want to read through it, is also on my Patreon. I uploaded it earlier today. Okay, so the Qliphothic armies are a direct way to paradoxically transcend the zodiac by descending into the shadow aspects of them in order to understand the architecture of the zodiac. Okay, it's extremely surface level within the New Age. In terms of the Necronomicon method, this is a little bit more risky, okay, because you're dealing with forces that are a little bit more, or should I say, much more intangible in nature. You're not just referring to forces that are resonant with the deep unconscious, but you're dealing with different extraterrestrial forces that are, actually resonant with what's actually on the other side of that zodiac. Okay, so basically what you're doing is that you're entering different zodiacal constellations, whether it's on the astral level or ritually, in order to basically use that zodiac as a gateway into the alien gnosis that is holding the multiverse together as a whole. It's huge. Okay, so there are certain zodiacal gateways that are basically linked to different extraterrestrial intelligences that are, in a way, sort of, you could say, acting as the puppet masters of the zodiac as a whole, and therefore gaining their extraterrestrial gnosis, you are then able to take yourself on a significant rewiring process where you are basically dissolving all aspects of humanity as a whole, and are therefore actually learning how to anchor these different extraterrestrial aspects of yourself, these different higher aspects of yourself, into your body, and then transcending the zodiac that way. And that one is a lot more dissolving, much more disorientating, and does absolutely require prior experience. It is worth, before going into that method, and I'm also putting that method on my Patreon as well, but before going into that method, it is absolutely worth building a relationship with the outer gods, referring specifically to Nyarlathotep. Nyarlathotep is the main one because he will basically train your system to be able to hold these alien intelligences. There's Nyarlathotep, there's also Azathoth, there's also Shub-Niggurath, and then there is also Yog-Sothoth as well. All of those invocations, by the way, are on my Patreon. So working with these before going into the sort of the Necronomicon gnosis and accessing that portion of the zodiac and transcending it that way, it's worth building a strong relationship, a strong working relationship with Nyarlathotep, and maybe even making a contract with Nyarlathotep before you actually venture into those realms, so that you are taking that essence as a part of you. And when you're taking Nyarlathotep as a part of you, you are actually taking that sort of that aspect as a part of you that acts as the kind of gateway, the conduit between the expansive void energy and outer gods gnosis and humanity itself, as that is the role that Nyarlathotep actually plays. Whereas then if you're taking Azathoth, for example, as a part of you, then you're literally merging with your most chaotic aspect. If you take Shub-Niggurath as a part of you, you're merging with the Void Mother, and if you take Yog-Sothoth as a part of you, you are merging with the literal lock and key of all of time and space in general. So if you're building a conscious relationship with all of those entities before going in to the Necronomicon gnosis via the zodiacal gateways, then it's going to basically ensure that you are able to ground the energy, because the role of these gods is to teach you how to navigate these different planes and ultimately show you how to shift between them at will. Okay. When it comes to rituals and initiations through the zodiacal gateways, there are various requirements. It's not something that you can do any day. Okay. It's not like, oh, I'm going to sort of pass through the gate of Pisces today. Okay, you have to make sure that either the moon or the sun is operating within that gateway and passing through that given zodiac at that time. And in my view, it's actually worth exploring both. I've yet to do this myself, but it's actually worth exploring an aspect of the zodiac when the moon passes through that gateway and when the sun passes through that gateway. So with the sun, for example, the sun will basically move through a given gateway for about a month or a little bit longer than a month every year, okay, and it will move through that gateway. So that means that if you are accessing these energies and these zodiacal transcendent portals through the sun gateway, it basically means that you only have one opportunity a year to initiate into each gateway. But if you wait for it to come round, it does have a very substantial effect, and it does actually set you up on a very good initiatory process. Because say you initiate into the gate of, how do I put it? Say if you initiate into the gate of Aquarius, when the sun's moving into it, then you'd literally have like a month to integrate that energy before the sun then moves into the next constellation, which is then Pisces, for example. So then it will literally set you up on a perfect process of initiation that will extend for like a month or a little bit longer than a month. If you don't want to wait for the sun to move into that zodiac, which, you know, you can be waiting over a year to start the process. Obviously, if you wanted to start at Aries, which is always advised, then you'd have to wait literally until March, okay, or you'd have to literally wait until March, April to be able to initiate into that given gateway. Whereas you can also do it through the lunar cycle as well. So the lunar cycle, the moon moves through each of the 12 zodiac basically once a month. Okay, and that basically means that that also sets you up on a very good initiatory process, because say you could do Aquarius 1 month, and then you just wait for before entering into Pisces, you then just wait until the moon moves into it in the following month, and then you have over a month to integrate that initiatory energy. But bear in mind that the sun and the moon are going to have very different energies. So when you initiate into a given zodiac or pass through a particular zodiac from an occult perspective, when the moon moves through that gateway, it will basically mean that there's a lot more unconscious energies coming to the surface. Whereas if you use the sun as the entry point, then it basically means that you're going to be dealing with that almost like much more around like false illumination and shedding deeper layers of illusions that appear good on the surface but actually aren't. So it is worth kind of exploring both, sort of exploring a given initiatory path, a given zodiacal path of transcendence using the moon, and then using the sun as well. Okay, it's very, very good for that. Okay, so basically what I'm saying is that you can use the 12 Qliphothic armies to initiate into or transcend the zodiac using the lunar current, the lunar cycle, and then you can do the same with the sun. Okay, and that would be very complete. And again, use your divination. It may not be completely required to do that. Okay, and then you can do the same with the Necronomicon current if you're using my rituals. Okay. In some sort of representations of the zodiac, you've probably heard of the 13th zodiac, which is Ophiuchus. Okay, and some people say there's no point in including Ophiuchus, as there's 12 solid ones, but the Necronomicon system also does include that as well. It also does include Ophiuchus as the last initiatory gateway. So instead of actually starting at Aries, that particular one starts at the gate of Sagittarius and then moves through to Ophiuchus. But it really depends on the initiatory system that you're working with. So very, very powerful area of initiation. So to summarize, you transcend the zodiac by approaching either the 12 Qliphothic armies, initiating through them one by one, when either the moon or the sun passes through that given zodiac. Okay, giving yourself at least a month to process and alchemize the energies. And then you can do it again for when the sun goes through it or the moon goes through it, okay, to get an experience of the different energies. And then you can do the Necronomicon version of that if you feel called to as well. So basically you have to approach a resonant dark matter energy that holds dominion over the zodiacal constellations and is responsible for holding its shadow aspect in place. Okay, absolutely essential and extremely juicy area of occult initiation, but I think that is everything that I needed to cover in today's video. As I mentioned, definitely check out my Patreon, as these initiatory rituals to work with the 12 Qliphothic armies to transcend the zodiac and the Necronomicon version will both be on my Patreon very, very soon. There is literally a collection section on Patreon that is specific and is actually called Transcending the Zodiac. Okay, but it is a very intense endeavor, so definitely take your time with it, and it's better to gain experience in other areas first before tackling this area of evolution, because it is significant. You are committing to a deep process of karma purification. But for now, thank you guys. Definitely hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.